Emily had always loved her parents' old Victorian house. Its creaky floors and antique furnishings gave it a charm she found comforting. She often volunteered to house-sit when her parents went on their yearly vacation, enjoying the solitude and the chance to read in peace. One stormy night, as Emily sat in the living room engrossed in a novel, she began to hear faint whispers. Initially, she dismissed them as the wind howling through the trees or the house settling, but the whispers grew louder, forming coherent words that seemed to echo from the walls. "Help me." Emily froze. The voice was faint and desperate, sending chills down her spine. She stood up, trying to trace the source, but the whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Panic began to set in as the voices multiplied, each one pleading for help in a chorus of agony. Desperate to escape the growing cacophony, Emily ran to the kitchen, but the whispers followed. She grabbed a flashlight and headed to the basement, thinking she might find some logical explanation there. A faulty pipe, or a draft perhaps. As she descended the stairs, the whispers became louder, more insistent. In the basement, she found an old wooden trunk that had been left untouched for decades. The whispers seemed to be coming from within it. Trembling, Emily forced the lid open. Inside, she found old photographs and letters yellowed with age. The images depicted a family she didn't recognize, but they all shared one thing in common. Each face bore an expression of sheer terror. As she sifted through the items, she found a diary belonging to a young girl named Clara. The last entry was dated a century ago and spoke of being trapped, unable to escape. The final line read, "The walls whisper our torment. We are forever bound." At that moment, the basement door slammed shut, plunging Emily into darkness. The whispers crescendoed into screams. Emily felt a cold hand on her shoulder, and she knew she was not alone. Emily struggled to free herself from the cold grip on her shoulder. Her breaths came in shallow gasps as the whispers around her grew louder, almost deafening. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she tried to dial for help, but the screen was blank, unresponsive. Suddenly, the basement lights flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows on the walls. In one brief flash, she saw the faint outline of a young girl standing in the corner, her eyes wide with fear. It was Clara. "Please help me," the girl whispered, her voice merging with the others. Emily tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. She felt drawn to the girl, compelled to uncover the truth. Slowly, she approached Clara, her flashlight trembling in her hand. As she neared, the whispers shifted, forming a single word that echoed through the basement. "Trapped." Clara's ghostly form pointed to a section of the wall, and Emily noticed a loose brick. With shaking hands, she pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was an old, rusted key. The moment she touched it, a wave of cold air rushed through the basement, and the voices fell silent. Clara nodded, her eyes filled with hope. Emily realized that this key must unlock whatever was binding these spirits to the house. Determined, she ran back upstairs, feeling the oppressive presence lift slightly. She searched the house, finally finding an old locked door in the attic. Taking a deep breath, she inserted the key and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dusty room filled with old furniture and another trunk. As she opened the trunk, she found more photographs and a small journal. The first page read, "To free us, you must face the truth." Emily braced herself and began to read. Emily's hands shook as she turned the pages of the journal. Clara's entries revealed a harrowing tale of a family driven to madness by the relentless whispers. The last entry hinted at a ritual that could silence the spirits forever, but it was incomplete, the final steps torn out. Determined to end the torment, Emily sought help from a local historian, Mr. Hargrove, who specialized in the town's dark past. He explained that the house was built on land once used for occult rituals. The spirits trapped within its walls were victims of these ancient rites. "There's one way to release them," Mr. Hargrove said, handing Emily a faded book. "But it requires a great sacrifice." Emily's heart sank. The ritual needed a conduit, someone to channel the spirit's anguish and lead them to peace. Knowing she had no other choice, Emily prepared herself. That night, she gathered the necessary items and stood in the basement, the whispers now a roar in her ears. As she began the incantation, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. Shadows swirled around her, and she felt herself being pulled into their sorrow. The spirit's pain coursed through her, nearly overwhelming her senses. With a final, desperate effort, Emily completed the ritual. The whispers stopped. Silence enveloped the house. Exhausted, Emily collapsed, her body and mind drained. When she awoke, Mr. Hargrove was beside her, a look of relief on his face. "You did it," he said softly. "They're free." But as Emily looked around, she realized the house was different. It was as if the walls themselves had shifted, the very fabric of the place altered by the ritual. She knew she could never stay there again. Emily left the house, leaving behind the memories of the spirits who had once haunted it. But deep down, she knew that the darkness had only been momentarily appeased, not entirely vanquished. Jake was a skeptic. He never believed in ghosts or the supernatural, which is why he took a job house-sitting in an old mansion known for its eerie reputation. He laughed off the warnings of his friends and the creepy stories surrounding the house's history. On his second night, curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to explore the attic. Dusty and filled with cobwebs, it was a treasure trove of old furniture, broken toys, and forgotten memories. In the far corner, he found a mannequin, its lifelike eyes staring vacantly into space. Why would anyone keep this creepy thing? Jake muttered to himself, unease prickling at the back of his mind. He turned to leave, but heard a soft rustling behind him. He spun around and the mannequin had moved. It was now facing him directly, its eyes locking onto his. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He knew it was impossible, yet he couldn't deny what he saw. Dismissing it as his imagination, Jake decided to go back downstairs. That night, he struggled to sleep, haunted by the mannequin's lifeless gaze. Around midnight, he heard faint footsteps above him. The attic door creaked open, and the sound of something heavy being dragged echoed through the house. Summoning his courage, Jake grabbed a baseball bat and headed upstairs. The attic door was ajar, and inside, he saw the mannequin standing at the top of the stairs, its hand outstretched as if beckoning him. A cold shiver ran down his spine. "This isn't real," he whispered to himself, but the fear was all too real. The mannequin's mouth moved, forming silent words that Jake couldn't hear. Panic overtook him and he backed away, stumbling down the stairs. As he reached the bottom, the attic door slammed shut with a deafening bang. From that night on, Jake never went near the attic again, but the sound of footsteps and the dragging of something heavy continued to haunt him every night. He began to feel eyes on him, always watching, always waiting. Jake's sleepless nights continued, the sound of footsteps and dragging becoming a nightly torment. His skepticism was eroding, replaced by a gnawing fear that he couldn't shake. One night, after another round of haunting noises, he decided he had to get rid of the mannequin. He went back to the attic armed with a flashlight and a heavy blanket. He found the mannequin exactly where he had last seen it, its eyes now seeming to follow his every move. Summoning all his courage, he wrapped it in the blanket and carried it downstairs, struggling under its surprising weight. Jake drove to a remote field and dumped the mannequin, hoping that would be the end of his troubles. But when he returned to the house, he found the attic door wide open, the footsteps louder than ever. He ventured upstairs, dreading what he might find. To his horror, the mannequin was back, standing in the center of the attic, its blank eyes fixed on him. This time, it wasn't alone. Surrounding it were shadowy figures, barely visible in the dim light. They seemed to be whispering, urging the mannequin forward. Jake stumbled back, nearly tripping over a loose floorboard. Desperate, he ran to the library and began researching the house's history. He discovered that the mansion once belonged to a doll maker who dabbled in dark rituals. The mannequin was one of his creations, used to trap souls for his nefarious purposes. Determined to end the curse, Jake searched for a way to destroy the mannequin permanently. He found an old ritual described in one of the doll maker's journals. It required specific ingredients and a moonlit night, which was only days away. As the night approached, the hauntings intensified. The figures became more aggressive, and the mannequin seemed to move closer to him every day. Jake prepared for the ritual, knowing it was his last chance to break free from the terror that had taken over his life. Jake gathered the ingredients for the ritual: a silver knife, a black candle, and an ancient tome detailing the doll maker's dark practices. On the night of the full moon, he set up the ritual space in the attic, the mannequin standing ominously at the center. He began the incantation, the words foreign and guttural. The air around him grew colder, and the shadows deepened. As he recited the final lines, he slashed the mannequin with the silver knife. A piercing scream erupted, not from the mannequin but from the shadows around it. The shadowy figures recoiled, their forms twisting in agony before dissipating into the ether. The mannequin's eyes seemed to glow briefly before dimming to lifelessness. Jake collapsed to the floor, drained but hopeful that the ordeal was over. In the days that followed, the house was eerily quiet. Jake felt a sense of peace he hadn't known since he started house-sitting. He decided to leave the house, feeling that his time there had come to an end. Months later, he received a call from the new owner of the mansion, thanking him for whatever he had done. The hauntings had ceased, and the house felt alive again. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he had done more than just dispel a curse. He had freed tormented souls trapped for decades. However, late at night, he sometimes dreamt of the mannequin, standing in the attic, waiting for someone new to discover its dark history. Lily was a young college student who took up babysitting to earn extra money. One evening, she was hired to look after two children, Timmy and Sarah, while their parents attended a charity event. The house was an old, sprawling estate on the outskirts of town, filled with antique furniture and a history of unexplained occurrences. The evening started uneventfully. The kids were well behaved, and after dinner, Lily put them to bed and settled down to watch TV in the living room. Around midnight, she heard a soft knock on the front door. Puzzled, she opened it to find no one there. She shut the door and locked it, but as she turned away, she heard the knock again. This time it was louder, more insistent. She peered through the peephole but saw only darkness. Feeling unnerved, Lily decided to check on the children. As she entered their room, she found both kids wide awake, staring at the corner of the room. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "She's here," whispered Timmy. "Who?" Lily's heart raced. "The lady," Sarah replied. "She says she's our new babysitter." Lily's blood ran cold. She knew she was the only one in the house. She turned to look at the corner, and there, in the shadows, was the faint outline of a woman. The figure moved closer, becoming more defined. She was dressed in an old-fashioned nanny's uniform, her face pale and eyes hollow. "You need to leave," the ghostly figure whispered. "These children are mine." Lily backed out of the room, grabbing her phone to call the parents. As she dialed, the apparition followed her, floating silently through the hall. The call went straight to voicemail, and Lily was left with no choice but to confront the ghostly nanny. "Why are you here?" Lily demanded, her voice shaking. "I was their first nanny," the spirit replied. "I died protecting them, and I will not let them go." Before Lily could respond, the lights flickered and went out. The house was plunged into darkness, and the children's screams echoed through the halls. Lily's phone buzzed with a message from the parents. "We'll be home soon. Stay safe." She turned back towards the children's room, determined to protect them, but the phantom nanny was blocking the way, her eyes filled with malevolent intent. Emily, Jake, and Lily each faced unimaginable horrors while alone in these old haunted houses. Yet their stories didn't end here. The sinister forces they encountered had only begun to reveal their true intentions. Lily stood her ground, her eyes locked on the ghostly nanny blocking her path. The children's screams pierced the darkness, driving her forward despite the fear that threatened to paralyze her. "These children are under my care now," Lily declared, her voice trembling but resolute. "You can't have them." The nanny's eyes flashed with anger, and she raised a hand, causing the temperature in the room to plummet. Frost began to form on the walls, and Lily could see her breath in the frigid air. She had to act quickly. Recalling a story she'd heard about spirits, Lily remembered that confronting them with their own memories could weaken their hold. She took a deep breath and addressed the nanny directly. "You died protecting these children, didn't you? You were a good person, a caretaker. But they're safe now. You can rest." The nanny hesitated, her form flickering. I failed them," she whispered, her voice filled with sorrow. "No," Lily said firmly. "You didn't fail. You kept them safe. And now it's time to let them go." The nanny's eyes softened, and for a moment, Lily thought she might disappear. But then, a malevolent presence seemed to surge within her, and her expression twisted in rage. "You don't understand," the nanny screamed. "They're not safe. Something far worse is coming for them." Before Lily could respond, the parents burst through the front door, their faces pale with worry. The lights flickered back on, and the ghostly nanny vanished, leaving only a lingering cold in the air. The parents listened in shock as Lily recounted the night's events. They revealed that the house had a history of hauntings, but nothing as severe as what Lily described. Determined to protect their children, they agreed to consult a paranormal expert. As they awaited the expert's arrival, the family and Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the nanny's warning was more than just a lingering regret. Something darker loomed over the house, something that had yet to reveal itself. Emily, Jake, and Lily had each uncovered parts of their terrifying mysteries, but the true horrors were still lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. The paranormal expert, Dr. Thorne, arrived at the house, bringing with him an array of equipment and a deep knowledge of the supernatural. He listened to Lily and the family's account, nodding thoughtfully. "This spirit is different," Dr. Thorne said. "It seems protective but also bound by a duty it cannot abandon. We need to find out what she is truly protecting the children from." Dr. Thorne conducted a séance, hoping to communicate directly with the nanny's spirit. As they sat around the table, the room grew cold and the lights dimmed. The nanny's form appeared, her eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and urgency. "Something is coming," she whispered, "a darkness that seeks to consume the innocent." The room shook and a low growl echoed through the house. The nanny's form flickered, and she pointed towards the basement. "It lies beneath," she said before vanishing. Lily, Dr. Thorne, and the parents ventured into the basement where they found an old sealed door. With great effort, they broke it open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside, they found a shrine to a malevolent entity, surrounded by dark symbols and ancient relics. Dr. Thorne quickly realized that the nanny had been trying to protect the children from this dark force, bound to the house by a ritual gone wrong. They needed to destroy the shrine to sever the entity's connection. As they prepared to perform the cleansing ritual, the house seemed to come alive with a malevolent presence. Shadows loomed, and the air grew thick with malice. The parents held their children close, as Dr. Thorne and Lily worked quickly, reciting the incantations. A deafening roar filled the basement as the shrine erupted in flames. The dark presence writhed and twisted before finally dissipating into nothingness. The house fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting at last. The family thanked Lily and Dr. Thorne, grateful for their help. They decided to move, leaving the haunted memories behind. Lily returned to college, forever changed by the experience, but relieved to have helped the family find peace. Yet as she lay in bed at night, she sometimes felt a cold presence watching over her, a silent guardian ensuring that the darkness never returned. Emily, Jake, and Lily each faced unimaginable horrors, but they had emerged stronger, their experiences etching indelible marks on their souls. The houses that once held them captive were now silent, their dark secrets finally laid to rest. Yet in the shadows, new stories waited to unfold, for the darkness never truly sleeps.